Guys, just showing you our beardy. We have a bearded dragon. You little eel at me getting you up early, huh? Say hi to the YouTubers. When we got this guy a few months ago, well, I guess it was somewhere around October. He was literally like this long. You could like put him on a finger. And now he's like 18 inches. He's freaking huge. But he eats crickets, and we got a dietary food for him, and kale, different types of greens, turnip greens and stuff like that. And he's just a really lazy, lethargic pet. But he's just so cool. But just over there feeding him this morning, figured I'd get him out and show him the MAME cab. What do you think of the MAME cab, Kreacher? By the way, his name is spelled Kreacher, like from the Harry Potter movie. Remember the house elf named Kreacher? K-R-E-A-C-H-E-R. We just thought that was funny. But he's a pretty cool pet. He's rocking. Pretty docile. When they're little, they run around pretty fast. If they was to get out in your house, you'd sometimes have a little problem catching them, and they can be a little aggressive sometimes and hiss at you. And they get older and they get used to you. I mean, he's really pretty docile. But they have real sharp claws. It's about like cat's claws, but even tinier. They can make little tiny slices and cuts in you. Just from handling him today, I'll probably have a couple on my hands. But otherwise, I mean, he doesn't ever try to bite or anything like that. He just eats and lays around and sleeps. But let me go put him back in his aquarium or his terrarium. Just wanted you guys to meet Kreacher. What do you think? Say bye-bye, YouTube. Hey guys, I just ran to Lowe's and mainly went to get some plexiglass there. And that is 3 pieces that were cut from one sheet. I found a pretty decent price. This is 0.08 thickness acrylic. It's made by Optics. That's one of the brands that they carry at most Lowe's. They carry Lexan brand polycarbonate also, but this is acrylic, or like some people say plexiglass. Usually people are referring to brand names and stuff, but this is acrylic, and it's a little more likely to shatter. It doesn't have as much impact strength as Lexan, but it's about half the price. If you got this same sheet, it'd be close to double if you got like the Lexan brand polycarbonate. But that stuff, it tends to be like softer, like as far as like it seems to be like it can take impacts more, but it scratches easier and all. And it almost, to me, has a softer feel, but I'm not sure. I just know that this stuff is supposed to be clearer, and I have used this before on the control panel overlay for the Mortal Kombat 2. And it's been on here for, there's no telling how many years. And you can see I don't have that much light on in here, and it's still nice and glossy. Hasn't scratched up. It resists scratches pretty good. And I did this one myself and just got them to cut it close at the store. It ended up being really just tiny bit wider than I wanted it to be. You can see right there it comes slightly past the edge of the control panel overlay, so it barely fits up to the edge of the T-mold, but it was close enough fit. You can see it almost goes over the T-mold there on that corner, but they did a pretty good job cutting it. And then I had to come back and drill the screw holes out and the button holes, and that was a real pain. I was doing it with a seems like, I can't remember if it was a hole saw. It seemed like it was a hole saw, 1 1/8 inch hole saw. And what I did was take the original Lexan cover off that was all scratched up and had cigarette burns on it, and I marked the holes with a permanent Sharpie, a permanent marker. And I came back and just did my best with a hole saw, one at a time, to drill it. But now I have like a trim router and a trim router bit, and I think I'll be able to install the new plexiglass that I put on this new control panel over top of the control panel where the buttons are already drilled out, and I'll just be able to maybe drill holes where each buttonhole location is and drop the trim router bit down in there and just follow around the inside where the hole is on the wood panel, the control panel top, and it will cut out the buttonholes perfectly as long as I clamp it down and don't let it move. So I'll be able to do that for the joysticks also, and that'll make everything a lot easier. And I don't think I'm going to use screws on the new control panel plexi. I think that I'm just going to let the buttons do all the holding, because the buttons, you know, they're basically fasteners. If you think about them having a nut on the bottom, you're not getting this plexi off of here even if you didn't have screws on there. It's not coming off. But it may be possible, depending on if you have any overhang like I do right there on the edge, that somehow somebody could catch, I don't know, maybe a watch or a ring or something on there if they were playing kind of rough, and it might pull up on it, could potentially crack it or chip it on the corners or something, or possibly cut somebody if, you know, it was a drastic situation. But I don't think that would happen either. It's just I want to try to go for a cleaner design on this, and I have made my T-molding slot on the new control panel top in such a way that we're going to have the T-molding, it would be similar to this piece. Well, it's more like the Gauntlet Legend. See how this wraps all around? That's the way my new control panel top is going to be. We're going to have a T-molding wrapping all around, and if you can see here from the factory, this one comes up in such a way that just the edge of the T-molding sets a little proud there, and it's enough to catch the edge of the plexiglass, so the edge of the plexiglass is not exposed. The T-molding comes up over it. But this is a little wider T-molding than what I'm using. I think this is actually wider on the Gauntlet Legends than what is on the rest of the cabinet. On the rest of the cabinet there, I think it might be around 3/4 of an inch. It might be slightly larger, but I think this is almost a full 1 inch T-molding there. They made it a little wider around the control panel, I believe. But that allows for the slight thickness of the artwork and for the thickness of this. This is Lexan that came factory on these, I'm pretty sure. It shows some scratches if you take it off. It looks like Lexan, but it still looks really good for the age. And you can kind of see I had some broken T-molding on that corner there. You can kind of see the thickness of that Lexan. It's a little over 1/16 of an inch, but less than 1/8 of an inch. So I guess, shoot, in my head, what would that be? 3/32, something like that. But that's about the same thickness as what I bought in here, 0.08 inches. That's about the same thickness as we got in there. If it was 1/8 of an inch, it'd be like 0.125, I think. But anyway, this was about $26 plus tax for one sheet, and the one sheet was 44 inches by 32, I think. Let me look on my receipt here. I think that's what it was. Yeah, 44 by 32. And what I did is I said, well, I want it cut pretty close to my dimensions, but I'm going to finish trimming it up with the router. I don't trust them in their measuring. I know they can get close, but you know, I've got the cabinet right here in front of me, and I can do the measuring and get it closer to them, even if I just wanted to cut it by hand, which I could do now. I've got a plastic cutter here that I bought today. It's about $4. And at first I seen a scoring tool that you could get over where the laminate area is for laminate countertops, and it said it could cut, you know, laminate, and I think it might have said plastic too. But then I went back and found this right by the plexiglass, and it was about the same price, $3 something to $4, and it's made for plastic, you know, all types of plastic. It says trim rigid plastics up to 1/4 inch thick. And so I said, well, this is designed for plastic, and what I'm really going to use it for, not so much laminate, but for the plastic bezel that's going to go around this. Because if you remember, this plastic bezel that we got off of eBay, it's going to have to be cut down. It's a little too wide by maybe 1.5 to 2 inches, so we're going to have to cut an equal amount off of each side. And I'm not sure if the trim router can do it without cracking it, because it's an older bezel, and it's a little brittle actually. And I don't want to take the chance of busting it, because it was $40 shipped, which was the best price I could find, and it's not going to be easy to replace, at least not cheap to replace. So I may use this and just score it over and over with a straight edge on each side at the right area, and then just snap it and see if I can do it by hand, because that works pretty good with lots of things like laminate, or you know, people do it when they're doing like sheetrock. You know, sheetrock, you're cutting through paper and you just kind of snap where you've scored. Lots of plastics can be done in that same fashion. You just, you know, you cut down until about you got through half the thickness of the material, and then you just put it on a edge of, like, you know, a table or something that has a straight edge to it, and push down and snap it, and where it's weakest it's going to follow that all the way up, and usually get a good cut that way. I also picked up some little felt bumpers. These were about the thinnest I could find. They look like they're maybe They may be about the thickness of the plexiglass, actually. It don't look like 1/8 of an inch, but like it might be more than a 1/16 of an inch thick. But these are made, you know, to protect things. Like if you've got nice tables and you want to set a lamp or something down, you can put these on the bottom and protect from scratching wood surfaces and such. But I thought they were black when I started to pick them up, but they're actually a dark brown. But they had no black, but they had like a tan or a white, and I thought that would be too noticeable. And these are for going under these dust washers right here. People say that if you install these on top, that the plexi can get all scratched up if you don't put something underneath there to kind of protect it, because these, you see, they move out and back. And you might, you know, you probably won't see it just sitting there, but it does go over some. So where it goes over and out and back, it may start scratching it. It may leave a little line of scratches around your dust washers and be a little bit unsightly. So you put, I would say put 4 in there. Put one like right around here, one right around here, one there, one on top. And it will just, you know, give you a little bit of a cushion there. They won't actually make contact. They'll just slide around with the felt underneath. But stick those real close to the shaft of the joystick, but not so much that it's near the hole there, and, you know, so it can be loose. And that way you won't see them at the edge. Don't put them right at the edge, because they'll be a little more noticeable, especially to, you know, somebody short or a child. But put them kind of up there, and it'll look like the dust washers are slightly floating, and it should work fine. And since they're a dark color, they won't be noticeable. If I would have got white or tan, especially if I mounted them near the edge of the underside of this, then you would see those. And but that's my first plan. That's what I told you that I'm probably going to do, because I didn't want to go through the problems of routing for the dust washers like the Mortal Kombat cabinets. But in the back of my mind too, I was thinking, you know, I might still go ahead and do that, because it would look awful nice to be able to rest these dust washers down into a cutout and they just float around in there and be under the artwork. So I did go ahead and pick me up a router bit. This is a straight router bit, and it can do plunge cuts. That's where you just go straight down into the material and start cutting at any point across it. You don't have to come in from the edge. Trim router bits, they ride around the edge. They never are used for anything like on the inside of a piece of wood, anywhere that's not near the edge. But I didn't have one of these bits. I had some decorative bits and stuff, and I haven't had that router long, so got me 1/4 inch shank, 1/2 inch straight cutting plunge bit here. And Skill was the cheapest ones I seen. I started to pick one up that was Bosch, and my goodness, it was like $15 or $16 for almost the same type of bit. I think it might have been slightly longer. And this was like $6 and something, like $6.50. And I'm like, oh god, man, it's just Skill brand. It looked like almost the same bit, and the price was less than half, I think. And I said, you know, no more than I'm going to use it. I'm just going to take this. So should be good. It's got a 1/2 inch cutting width. That's the diameter. As soon as you plunge down, you're making like a 1/2 inch circle. It's going to get one that was smaller. I was going to get a 1/4 inch, because then I knew I could do anywhere from 1/4 inch to just however big I wanted to move the router around and, you know, hollow out a place in the wood, you know. And then I seen the price. I think this was actually like $6.29, and it was like $6.89 to get one that was a 1/4 inch. And I said, well, shoot, you know, this is bigger. Had to use more metal to make it. Usually that would be up another couple dollars in price to go larger. And if I was cutting out a very large area, say I was doing something for a trackball or something, this could actually cut out the entire circle for a trackball, because, well, this is 1/2 inch diameter, but I think, I'm looking, looks like it's about 3/4 inch to an inch from the highest point that the bit can cut to the lowest point. Looks closer to an inch to me. Looks like it could do this wood, so I think it could actually go down and trim out this entire trackball in one pass. So if you ever wanted to do that with a router instead of a hole saw or something, you could probably do it if you had something to guide your router. And that's where the dilemma comes up doing these. I'm going to have to somehow figure out some type of a circle. I don't know if I'm going to cut a ring off of a bucket or what I'm going to do. I'm going to have some type of large circle that goes all around this area right here, so that the inside of the base, or, well, I guess you would just say the side of the round base on my trim router, will ride around inside of it. I don't know if you guys have ever played with something called a spirograph, but when we were young, they had something called a spirograph, and it was a kit that you could use to make all kind of different designs on paper, and you had different colored little pins you could insert. And what you were doing lots of times, you were inserting the pen, the tip of it, or the colored marker, into a little hole on something, let's say, similar to this dust washer. and you would place it inside of a larger circle that had like teeth around it, almost like a gear, and it would ride around it when you moved the pen. And as you moved the pen, the little hole that the colored marker was in wouldn't be dead center, it'd be on the edge, and as you rode around it would make little spirals and designs like flowers and all kind of crazy stuff. And the more you went around it, it's like it would fill it in more, and you could change colors and insert it in different holes in the smaller plastic circle on the inside. Well, you know, it's almost like I'm going to have me a giant, you know, spirograph type circle here, and the router's going to ride around, and its circular base is going to make contact. The outside of its circular base will make contact with the inside of whatever circle that is I use for a guide, and it will ride around now to give me my first circle to start off with. And then I'll leave that clamped in place, or, you know, somehow connected to the control panel top. And as it's in place, to make sure I don't go too far out, I'll have to come in on the inside and just kind of move the router around and just, you know, take out all the wood, all the excess. And I'll only drop down, you know, as thick as this dust shield is, so that's like a 1/16 of an inch. I won't drop down much more than that, maybe slightly more, just so it'll move around free in there. And then when I'm done, I'll end up with, hopefully, just right on the inside of these T-nuts. I can't go any further than that. Can't cut into the T-nuts. So right there, as I'm moving around, if you could put a pin on the outside of this, push it over and go in a circle all around it. Oops. Now I've got my control panel top's not connected. Dropping my router bit in the floor. Luckily it's encased. But anyway, you don't want to come outside too far, but you've got to come to about that point in a circular fashion all the way around, so these dust washers will allow the full range of movement for the joystick. And ideally you might want to come maybe just another 1/8 of an inch farther, just to make sure they're not bumping and restricting joystick movement in any way. But we just can't go all the way to where the edge of the T-nuts are, so it's going to be real close there. Be a thin little bit of wood left. But that's something I got to brainstorm about and try to find something to actually do that for me. You know, I could do it by hand, and you would probably never know. I could just like disassemble the joystick, take it out, plunge the router down, and just router up. I could just draw me a circle, you know, use something to draw a circle that comes up to that point, like within about, that looks like about a 1/4 inch of the T-nuts, and just draw a circle, plunge the router down, and just freehand it, go in and freehand it. And that may be what I end up doing. It's just, it'd be nice if it was nice and pretty like factory, and it made a perfect circle. I just don't know any other way to do that without using some type of guide around it. But I'll figure it out. And if I did do it by freehand, even if it wasn't a perfect circle, if I just got kind of close to the line, it's going to be covered by the artwork. But then there's, you know, another problem with that, and I think I told you about it in a previous video. When the artwork's over top of this, the dust washer is very likely to stick to the 3M adhesive on the bottom of the artwork, because even though it's sitting down in a slot and it can move around freely, if there's any kind of pressure or just sagging of that artwork sticker, it's going to touch the top of this dust washer and it's going to stick to it, and that's supposed to be pretty strong. So to get around that, I think what I'd have to probably do is make me a little circle out of some type of, I don't know what it would be, some type of material. And probably to be safe, it would have to come, like, let's say the circle goes out to here that we have to cut out. Probably want to come almost to the T-nuts and cut a very thin piece of something. I don't know what it would be. Some type of backing that could be actually stuck to the back of the artwork, so that that area is not sticky anymore, and these dust washers are free to ride around. And the only way to stick it in the perfect place would probably be set the dust washer in place in the groove that we've cut, set the piece of material on there that's a little larger than the cutout for the dust washer, set it in place, and I don't know what you would use, something just slightly tacky to just hold it in place temporarily, and do it on both joysticks. Then lay your artwork in place, and when you lay your artwork in place, you make sure you get it dead on right when you lay it down, or have some excess off the edge that you can trim. Apply it, burnish it down, you know, mash it down, make sure it's adhering good, and then go ahead and do everything else you're wanting to do. And what will happen is that piece of stuff that's, you know, going in this area will keep the dust washer from sticking. It'll still allow it to have free movement, but since it's adhered to the back of the sticky surface, the 3M surface of the artwork, it's going to be in there permanently. and it will keep this from ever sticking to it. So, I mean, it will work fine. The only thing I can see about that is possibly whatever that is that I would put on top of the dust washer to keep it from sticking may make a very slight raise in the artwork if, you know, if I don't get it thin enough. I mean, I don't even know what I would ever use. I mean, I don't know if something like a good grade wax paper would work. You know, that might move around under the 3M adhesive. I doubt it, because the 3M adhesive is going to stick to the wood all the way up to this point, all the way around. So it probably couldn't move much. Or very, very, very thin cardboard. Okay, well, I finished talking about the plexiglass. I just wanted to say, you might have noticed there's one corner chipped. One corner is chipped and damaged on this. This was actually the best sheet they had. Somebody had dropped like a whole large little quantity that they had there stocked up. It was like about 12 sheets. They either dropped it on the corner really hard, or somebody run over it when it was, you know, in storage with a tow motor or something. And this was the best one. They had some that were cracked all the way back to here, and you couldn't see it. Whoever stocked it had hidden that. I don't know if they did it and they were afraid they were going to get in trouble, but they went ahead and stocked it. But he told me if I didn't want that piece, he would cut me a good piece off of a fresh one. And I was like, nah. I said, this is just going to be used for something that may or may not happen. This is actually for the marquee if I need it. But I may order one that's already on some type of plexi or glass. This whole game has some that's, I think, screen printed on the glass. And some that's on, I think it's on plexi or something. That may be all I need with that. I may not need another covering on it unless I get something that's out of that translite, I think. I know they do glass, and I think they do translite, so I can't remember if they do something on plexi. But anyway, it may not happen, but that was just the last part of that sheet, and I wanted to cut something useful, so I cut it to about the dimensions of what a marquee would need to be. It's about an inch taller from top to bottom there. It's like 8 inches, and I only need like 7 inches, and then the width I only needed 24, and I've got 32, so I can cut probably like this much off of it, you know. I can cut 8 inches off. So anyway, that was just to make that useful, and I told him not to worry about cutting it off a fresh sheet. And then the next size is about 15 by 32, and this is for the control panel overlay, this piece right here. And then the last one is for the monitor, to cover the monitor, and it's like 21 by 32. It only needed to be about 21 inches high. I had measured, and from down here at the lowest point I'd possibly do, almost all the way up to here, which is going to have a 3/4 inch piece of speaker panel on there, it was about 21 inches. So I'm probably going to end up with an extra half to probably inch and a quarter that's going to be cut away. But that cover did enough, and I thought, you know, shoot, even though I wanted thicker stuff for the plexi on the monitor, I needed 0.08 thickness, which is less than an eighth, for the control panel overlay. I didn't want it any thicker than that. That's what I had used on my Mortal Kombat 2, and that's about the thickness of what's on the Gauntlet Legends and some of the other games from the factory. And I thought that's what I needed. So, you know, to buy 2 sheets and end up really wasting money just to get another sheet that was a little thicker for the monitor, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to buy this one sheet that was about the best price and get the most cuts out of it I could. So I'm just going to use this 0.08 thickness for the monitor cover. I think it'll be plenty clear enough. To be honest, the thinner it is, probably the clearer it is. And as long as I support it from the sides with pieces of trim wood, which will actually be in place to support the bezel, then any of the surface that's left from the bezel, like the inch or 3/4 inch that's going to be around that bezel, is going to be extra support for this. And I don't think, unless you're sitting there like pushing on it, that you're even going to notice that it has that much flexibility, because this stuff is pretty flexible. It's pretty thin. But nobody's ever going to damage it either. I mean, they'd have to really hit the heck out of this to even crack it, and if they did, they're not going to hurt the monitor. It's just not going to happen, not unless they had a sledgehammer or a 2x4. But I think it'll work out fine. And if it doesn't, I can always come back and use that for another control panel or two and put me a thicker piece in here. But anyway, right now I'm going to try to brainstorm and see if I can figure out how to route this and get this like I want it, and possibly go ahead with that.